each week that we come together. I think about what does it mean to say goodbye to the week that has been and to welcome the week that comes in. And as the sun set tonight, as we lit our Shabbat candles, we began the process of welcoming in the Sabbath bride that will continue in just a moment. And as we did that, we said Shalom to Hanukkah. We said Lehitraot. We said until we see you again. And Hanukkah this year has been such a joy, a time of light, a time of blessing, a time of, especially as a parent of young children, that joy of childhood. It's amazing when you give a child a gift that doesn't have to be something huge or expensive or amazing. It can be something very simple, and to see their eyes light up and the joy in that moment, we need that. And this year especially, we've really needed that, the light in those eyes. So we'll turn now to Welcome Shabbat. On page 13, we have Shalom Aleichem, but I just want to welcome Maureen Session, our Director of Lifelong Learning, who is our Chazanit for tonight. Page 13.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bachuni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Sechem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
There's a lovely poem from Chaim Nachman Bialik at the bottom of the page. The sun on the treetops no longer is seen. Come, let us welcome Shabbat, their true queen. Behold her descending, the holy, the blessed, and with her God's angels of peace and of rest. Come now, dear queen, with us abide. Come now, Shabbat, our bride. Shalom Aleichem, angels of peace. And we'll turn to the first of the Psalms of Kabbalat Shabbat, page 15.
L'kunaranan el Adonai, Naria l'soyishenu. Arba'im shana kut gadol va'omar am tewei levavhem vehem lo yadu derachai asher nishpati v'yapi im yavon el menuchati.
And with the change of Bima buddies, we get to change our rhythm a little bit, change our melodies, and do some different readings. So I want to read together on page 16, the 96th Psalm. Sing a new song to Adonai, acclaim Adonai, all people on earth.
Sing to Adonai, proclaim each day God's awesome might, announce to the world God's glory and wonders.
For Adonai is great, deserving of praise. Adonai alone is to be revered as God.
All the gods of the nations are nothingness, but Adonai created the heavens.
Majesty and might accompany God. Splendor and strength adorn God's sanctuary.
Acknowledge Adonai, all families of nations. Acclaim God's majestic power. Acknowledge God's glory and bring him tribute.
Worship Adonai in resplendent reverence. Let the earth tremble in God's presence.
Declare to the world, Adonai is sovereign. God has steadied the world, which stands firm, and judges all nations with fairness.
Let the heavens rejoice. Let the earth be glad. Let the sea and all it contains exult.
Let field and forest sing for joy. Adonai comes to rule the earth, to rule the world justly, the nations with faithfulness. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tager haaretz. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim. V'tager haaretz, Yeram hayam, Yeram hayam, Yeram hayam, Umelo, Yeram hayam, Yeram hayam, Yeram hayam, Umelo, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tager haaretz. Yalo sadai v'chol asher bo, az yirananu kol atzei ya'ar. Lifnei Adonai kiva, kiva lishpot haaretz, yishpot tevel v'tzadek, ve'amim b'emunato.
Page 17, we'll continue quietly.
Ohavei Adonai seinu ra, shomer nafshal chasidav, miyad rishayim yatzileim. Or zaru l'tzadik u'yishrei lev simcha, simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, v'hodu l'zecher kodsho.
And we'll turn to the bottom of page 19 to sing together about the Holy One and the mountain of God.
Romamu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romamu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romamu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romamu. Romamu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romamu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romamu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romamu.
On page 20, we'll rise for Mizmor LeDavid.
Mizmor LeDavid, Havu l'Adonai b'nei Elim, Havu l'Adonai, Kavod va'oz yair, Havu
Adonai kevod shemo yishtachavu l'Adonai b'chadrat kodesh kol Adonai almahim el hakavod hirim Adonai almayim rabim kol Adonai ba'koach yai kol Adonai ve'adar kol Adonai shover arazim v'shaber Adonai et hazeh al-vadon v'yarkidem kemo egel Lebanon Lesirion Lesirion kemo v'reimim yai kol Adonai Hotzeh lavotesh kol Adonai yachil midbar Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh kol Adonai
Yechol elayalot vayechesov Ye'arot uvechalo kulo omer kavod Adonai lama yashav yeshav Adonai melech leolam Adonai hoz le'amo yiten Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. You may be seated. Lecha Dodi, the song of Shlomo Halevi Alkabetz from Tzfat, is our journey from weekday to Shabbat. The recognition that we need many things to make Shabbat. We need it to be the right time, the right place, the right people. We have to get our souls together. And so in these words, we remember who we are, and we invite the Sabbath bride to join us, to dance with us, to sing with us, to celebrate Shabbat. So on page 21, we'll do the first two stanzas, then we'll turn to 22 for the last two when we rise for the last one. Lecha Dodi lekrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi lekrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'divor echad, Ishmi'anu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, l'shem u'tiferet v'litila. Lecha Dodi lecha Dodi lekrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi lekrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki mekor habracha, merosh mikedem nesucha, sof ma'aseh b'machshavat tila. Lecha Dodi lecha Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Yamin u'shmol tifrotzi, ve'et Adonai taritzi, al yad ish ben partzi, v'nismecha v'nagila. We rise. Lecha Dodi lecha Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela.
בואי ושלום עטרת מעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
You may be seated. The song for Shabbat is found on page 23.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת.
טוב לדון לאדוני, לזמר שמך יום נגיד בבוקר אז תכה, ונוצא בלילון. על יסר לינה ולייך היום לחינם. מגן למסכת נאמר משקולתך.
Sadika tamar yifrach, ke'erez b'avanan yizkar shetulim b'beit Adonai b'chatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yenuvim b'seha deshenim v'rananim yehu lehagid ki hashar Adonai suri velo atavo.
Page 24.
Adonai malak eud lavei.
Lavei shatmeti tazarti katev balti mahon. Mikolon mai
Edo takunamnu ma'alevetcha navakodesh Adonai leorach yamim.
Mourners Kaddish, those observing a yahrzeit, please rise and join with me on page 24. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabam.
Amen.
V'almad yivrach rotei v'yamlech malchutei. B'chayachon v'yamachon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. Bagala v'zman kariv yimru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehei shmei rabba mevorach le'olam olamei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitaleh la'al shmei d'kudsha b'richu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata damaran v'alma v'yimru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shamaya. V'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mamav v'yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. You may be seated. I'm going to come down to you to share a little bit of Pirkei Avot for the week. So I got a question for you. How many times have you had a conversation that didn't go quite as you had planned it? Did you ever send someone an email after you were talking to confirm a detail or two of the conversation, and their response was, "Were we in the same conversation?" Sometimes two people can walk away thinking that they are in complete agreement or disagreement, and neither is actually true. And in this week's Pirkei Avot, in the 9th Mishnah of the first parak, the first chapter, Shimon ben Shetach acknowledges this challenge. So it says that Shimon ben Shetach Omer, he said this, he used to say this, Havei marbe lehakor et ha'edim, be very thorough in your interrogation of witnesses, v'havei zakir bidvarecha, and be very precise, careful in the choosing of your words. Shema, that perhaps, just in case, mitocham yoldu l'shaker. You don't want it to be that the words you say lead someone else into falsehood, into a lie. Now, Shimon ben Shattach lived during the rule of King Alexander Yannius, or Yannai, and that particular individual had a strong dislike of the rabbis, of the Pharisees. And yet, Shimon's own sister was married to that king. For a time, Shimon had to live somewhat in exile away from the community, but after a time, he was able to return to Jerusalem, return to the Sanhedrin, and which, while he was away, had been filled by Yannai, Alexander Yannai, with Sadducees. Now, this is a problem because the Pharisees and the Sadducees didn't get along so well. The Pharisees become the rabbis, and the Sadducees were allied with the priests and had a different way of looking at the world. So Shimon ben Shattach believed pretty strongly in procedure and strict justice, and yet in one of those times, he went around his own precedent, and his actions led to a whole lot of executions, not normally the way the Sanhedrin worked. And revenge from those families led to false accusations against his own child, and that perhaps inspired this Mishnah. And yet, there's another story about Shimon ben Shattach, which is sort of the vision of how to be a mensch. You know, his students go and they buy a camel on his behalf. They're his shlichim, they're his agents, and they go and they buy a camel. And when they bring it home, they take off the saddle, and what do they find underneath? They find an incredibly rare, incredibly valuable gem. And his students say to him, "You don't ever have to work a day in your life, you're rich." And he said, "No, it doesn't work that way. That gem was not part of the transaction. That gem, if the Gentile seller had known that gem was there, he would not have sold the camel in that way. And when you bought on my behalf and negotiated for the price of the camel and the price of the saddle, you did not negotiate for this gem. It was not part of the deal." And so he goes to this Gentile, this non-Jewish owner, and he returns the very valuable gem. And there's this moment that's unclear if it's a conversion moment or just a moment of great praise, that this individual says that the God of Shimon ben Shattach must be praised. So he was strong in his honesty. Shimon teaches us the importance of truth and also the importance of being cautious with how we speak. We have to ensure that what we intend to say is heard, taking a little bit more time to ask questions, to ensure that we were clear. It's important. Now, I can think about in my own house. I can think of a number of times where I thought I said something and my wife thought I said something else. Or my children thought I said something else. I'm sure if you were to think back, you'd find the same stories in your house. But when we're in a courtroom, it's even more important to be precise. Witnesses need to understand, especially in the case of the Sanhedrin, that their testimony can literally be the difference between life and death for someone. And so judges need to ensure that the witnesses understand their roles and are absolutely truthful. A conviction or acquittal should be based on honest testimony and real evidence. And the commentators looking at this Mishnah also focus on the judges themselves. The judges should ensure that their questions, their instructions are not leading the witness. They have to be neutral counsel, just as, in a modern courtroom, all those lawyer shows say, objection, leading the witness. They demand, in our tradition, not just one examination of the witness, but more than one, multiple examinations, to make sure that their story stays straight, that their evidence is clear. I think these lessons are relevant in this world too. Even if our American courts work a little bit differently than those of the ancient Jewish world, We should ensure that they are free from corruption, that they provide a fair trial for all, and that all who exercise just and rightful authority do so, that all who share evidence should understand their responsibilities. Now, I think we can look at our world today and say that the courts work really, really well, sometimes, but not every time. And how do we work to make sure that those systems work right every time, as our text is trying to teach us? So may it be that the push for justice in our Mishnah pushes us towards justice now. Shabbat Shalom. We'll continue with the Baruch Hu. We'll rise for the Mariv service.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai Borach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Borach Leolam Va'ed.
You may be seated. We're still on page 28, leading into the blessings before Kriyat Shema.
Umavir yom umevi laila, umavdil ben yom uben laila, Adonai tzvaot shemo, El chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu, le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, Amariv Aravim. Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael, Amcha Ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, Hukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta. Arakein Adonai Eloheinu, V'shachbeinu v'kumeinu, Nasiach b'chukacha. ונשמח בדברי תורתך ולמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגע יומם ולילה, יומם ולילה. ועבדך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
והיה שמצוותי אשר אנוכי נתן במצוותיך. אתה יוצא בחדר. על הארץ ויאמר אדוני בשלום, דבר אל בני ישראל ציצית. כאן הבינו אותם ונתנו ציצית, הכנף שלהם והם לציצית. זכרתם מצוות אדוני וציוויתם
Adonai Elohechem Emet.
We're on page 32.
Umalchuta v'ratzon kiblu aleihem Moshe u'bnei Yisrael lechanu shira b'simcha rabba v'amru kulam mi chamocha b'elim Adonai mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh norat tehilot oseh felem Malchu chara uvanecha bokei hayam lifnei Moshe Zeli anu v'yameru Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed V'ne'amar kifada Adonai et Yaakov u'gulo mi'el chazak mimenu Baruch atah Adonai
Baruch Hashem.
Gal Yisrael.
On page 33, we'll read together at the top of the page. Help us, Adonai, to lie down in peace and awaken us again, our sovereign to life. Spread over us your shelter of peace. Guide us with your good counsel. Save us because of your mercy. Shield us from enemies and pestilence, from starvation, sword, and sorrow. Remove the evil forces that surround us. Shelter us in the shadow of your wings, O God, who watches over us and delivers us, our gracious and merciful ruler. Guard our coming and our going. Grant us life and peace now and always. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Praised are you, Adonai, who spreads the shelter of peace over us, over all God's people Israel, and over Jerusalem.
Ushmor tzeiteinu u'v'meinu l'chaim u'shalom me'atav yad olam u'fros aleinu sukat shlomecha Baruch atah Adonai Ha'porei sukat shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim.
And we rise, page 34, for V'shamru and the Chatzi Kaddish, and then we'll take time for our Shabbat Amidah. Now, probably in the last few days, those who have been davening the Amidah on a regular basis have gotten used to adding Al Hanisim for Hanukkah. Well, guess what? Hanukkah is no longer with us. We'll have to wait till next year. So you can drop that extra paragraph and it's just Shabbat, which is just a gift for us all. Page 34.
V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם ברית עולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ שמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם וביום השביעי שבת וינפש שבת וינפש ושמרו בני Israel et השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, וילמד דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, וחייכון וביומכון, וחיי דכל בית ישראל. בגלה, ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעולם לעולם לעלמיה. יתברך וישתבח, ויפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלש מקודשה ברכו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעולמם, ואמרו אמן.
Take time for our personal prayer. When you've finished your personal prayer, we'll continue, remain standing on page 47 with Vayechulu.
ויחולו השמיים והארץ וכל צבאם, ויאכל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה, וישפוט ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה. ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי ויקדש אותו, כי בו שבת מכל מלאכתו אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, קונה שמיים וארץ, מגן אבות בדברו, מחיי מתים במאמרו, האל הקדוש אין כמוהו, המנהל meniach le'amo, beyom Shabbat kodsho, kivam ratza lehaniach lahem, kivam ratza lehaniach lahem, lefanav nahon ve'irav achad, v'nodel lishmaho b'chol yom tamid, ne'on habrachot. El ha'odot, Adon ha'shalom, Mekadesh ha'shabbat u'barech shevi, u'meniach b'kedusha, le'amed u'shnei oneg, zecher l'maaseh bereishit.
At the top of page 48, we read together, Our God and God of our ancestors, find favor in our Shabbat rest. Instill in us the holiness of your mitzvot, and let your Torah be our portion. Fill our lives with your goodness, and gladden us with your triumph. Cleanse our hearts so we might serve you faithfully, lovingly, and willingly, Adonai our God. Grant that we inherit your holy Shabbat, so that the people Israel who hallow your name will always find rest on this day. Praised are you, Adonai, who hallows Shabbat. Kaddish Shalem is on 48.
Yikra v'yikra shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Ve'alma divrach hirtei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayachon v'yamechon v'chayerucho beit Yisrael v'agalav izman kari v'imru Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam le'omei almayad. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitraman v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalav shemei dekudasha v'rechu le'ela min kol v'chata v'shirata tushbrata v'nechamata damiram be'alma v'imaru Amen. Titzkabat sloton uvoton dekol Yisrael kadam avahon divishmaya v'imaru Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'imaru Amen. Oh, say shalom b'ramav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'imaru Amen.
We'll turn to page 49 for Kiddush, and I invite you to join us to take a glass of wine or whatever is your chosen beverage, and to say these blessings with us.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava u'vratzon hinchilanu, zikaron l'maseh bereshit, ki hu yom tefillah l'mikra'ei kodesh, zecher tziat Mitzrayim. Kivanu b'arta, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol amim, v'shabbat kodshecha, ve'ahava u'ratzon, hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh haShabbat.
Amen. I'll invite you to remain standing. We'll turn to page 51 for Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol, la'tet gedula le'otzer breshit, shelo asanu k'goyei haratzot, ve'lo samanu k'mishpachot adama. Telo samchel kenu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, anachnu korim, umishachavim umodim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
You may be seated. We remember this week, we're thinking of Sonia Miller, Fannie Loeb, Sylvia Klein, Gloria Abrams, Ruth Steiner, Robert Mark Diamond, Pearl Mark, Jack Jacob Drucker, Philip Weisler, Julius Grossman, Leo Gervey, Louise Lewis, Eugene Lewis, Nancy Weisberg, Rose Gottler, Faye Horowitz-Seltzer, Erwin Shantz, Bertha Slomka, Nathan Stein. We're thinking of Sarah Daneman, Rose Fry, Betty Sweet, Kevin Fry, Florence Mayers, Minnie Seiden, Sam Luncheon, Aaron Applefield, Jack Jacobson, Joseph Schur, Libby Clavin Fried, Betty Shapiro, and Louis Abelowitz. We'll turn now to page 52, and there we find the Mourner's Kaddish. I invite those in mourning to rise and join with me, those observing a yahrzeit, to share these words together. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Bi'alma divrach rutei v'yamlech malchutei. B'chayachon v'yamachon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael. B'agalat v'zman kariv v'yamru Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam olamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudsha b'richu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran bi'alma v'yimru Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'kol Yisrael tevel v'yimru
Amen.
Amen. You may be seated. My announcement is, we'll see you tomorrow. So we'll turn to page 53 for Yigdal, and I really want to thank Maureen for joining with me and bringing in the energy and a little laughter. We need laughter.
Yigdal Elohim chai v'yishtabach nimsa v'yenen el metziuto echad en yachid keyichudo nelam v'gam en sof le'achduto en lo demot haguf ve'en haguf lo na'aroch elav kedushato Kadmon l'chol davar asher nivra rishon v'en reshin l'reshito Hino Adon olam v'chol na'otzar yoreh gedulato malchuto shefan nevuato netano el anshe segulato v'tifarto L'kan b'Yisrael k'Moshe od Navi
Umabhidat emunato, Torah temet natan, liyam ahoel, al yad nevi'ah neman beito. Lo yachalifael, velo yamir dato, le'olamim lezulatom. Sofer v'yodea setareinu, Mabir sof davar bekadmato, gomer leish chesed kemifalo, noten l'rasha ra kerishato, yishlach b'ketchahin meshichenu, liftot mechakeket yeshuato, metim yechayel berov chasdo, Baruch Adei Ad Shem Tehilato, Metim Yechayel Berov Chasdo, Baruch Adei Ad Shem Tehilato.
Shabbat Shalom. May your week be blessed. And join us in the morning for Shacharit. Tomorrow is exciting. We are reading a Haftorah that has not been read in not 1, 2, 3, but 20 years is the last time the Haftarah for Miketz has been read. So come join us. It's a good one.
Shabbat Shalom.
Grab the chalice. Just the chalice? Just the chalice, yeah.